Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Shanida Scotland. I am the head of film at Doc Society. For those of you who don't know, Doc Society is a non-profit founded in 2005 to support and champion independent documentary globally. We believe in the power of documentary and advocate for the sector and its filmmakers. We are also the BFI's documentary funding partner here in the UK, and we allocate funding across two production funds, the short documentary fund called Made of Truth, and the BFI Doc Society Features Fund, and the brand new Ripple Effect Fund developed to support and elevate a thriving documentary ecosystem here in the UK. So why are we here today? Well, the recent publication of the University of the West of England's Keeping It Real report highlighted that though the feature documentary sector is indeed a distinct element of the film and television industries, and of course has a status and ecosystem that is both unique and coherent, far too often feature documentaries are seen as either part of the independent film industry on the one hand, or as a breakout element of the television industry on the other hand. And as a result, UK feature documentary sector has been underinvested and undersupported by both film and television policy alike. Among the recommendations, the report highlights the need to raise the cultural status of feature documentary and champion its social value. Today, our panelists will speak to international perspectives to explore how the case for documentary funding is made abroad and reflect on how it can be articulated here in the UK as we think toward articulating a documentary film policy. I am joined today by panelists Diego Pino Anguita, Chief Executive of Chiledoc, Varadila Nurdin, Programme Manager at Indocs, and Mandrup, Head of Documentary Film at the Danish Film Institute, and Juan Pablo Libossart, Documentary Film Commissioner at the Swedish Film Institute. Before I go to the panelists, I just want to remind everyone watching us today that there will be time for questions. So please do get your questions into the chat box and we will come to those questions before we wrap today. So I'm going to give the floor to the panel so that they might briefly introduce themselves and introduce us to the documentary funding landscape in their own territories, and really just begin to start opening up sort of what the special value is that is ascribed to documentary film in their specific territories. Diego, thank you so much for joining us. I'd love to open with you.
Hi, Shanida, and hi, Anne, Varadila, and Juan Pablo, and thanks everybody from Sheffield Doc Fest to invite us to share with you our reality here in South America and what is happening about the documentary funding. It's very early here, actually still dark in this autumn, in a very cold autumn. And we want to share that things in Chile and in Latin America, of course, are very hard for documentary funding. But I say that today it's harder than in the last 5 years because things here are very crazy, and are crazy because the people is trying to take action of big changes in our countries, not just for documentary funding and things that are part of our artistic life, is part of the political and social life here. So, and that's a very good thing because now in Chile we have this option of writing a new constitution for us, more democratic, because our last constitution was written in dictatorship. So it's very, very difficult to fight for that. But in the last, I think, 20 years in Chile, you have to understand something. In Chile, there's no public television, because this constitution made just one public television, but the television that it's supposed to be public has no money from the state. It's just the spirit of the public, no? And for that reason, here in Chile, we don't know how to do films or documentary films with television. Actually, we learn to do documentaries without the broadcasters. We are more free in that way, but also we have less resources. And the resources come from a law that give us funds from the state. There are not lower funds. Actually, there are very good funds for make films. The thing today is that we have mostly the same funds that we have in 50 years ago, but we are more people doing films, no? So that's the problem that we are having now. And also, we don't have too much fund for distribution, no? So we do a lot of films here, but it's very difficult to distribute these funds. And for that reason, in the last 10 years, I had to say, we push for international co-productions. No, that's the way that we have a possibility to get more funds. And in that sense, we as Chiledoc, we are like the brand that represent the documentary sector all over the world and in Chile, trying to promote the Chilean documentary in the different film festivals and markets and other parts of the world, and also doing workshop for executive producers from documentary. We also do distribution actually here in Chile with theatrical releases. We do research. We organize the official delegations in the different doc international film festival as Doc Sheffield actually, and with all these tools, we're trying to put that to using our funds in Chile, but also start to connect internationally with other parts. And actually, in the last 5 years, we have a great results about it. This year, the Mole Agent was our great experience about what it's happening when you start to work collaborative with other countries, no? And you have this kind of results. Of course, the Mole Agent, as an example, has funds from Chile, from the Ministry of Culture, that is the ministry that represent and give of these funds. But the strength of the film was to start to work with Holland, US, and Germany at the same time. And Chile is now signing more co-production agreements with these states, giving us the opportunity to start to work and have fun from Chile and other parts of the world to do our films. I think that is like a very big summary of what's happening now here in Chile. But I have to say, as I say in the beginning, that everything we hope is going to change here in Chile, because we're reading our new democracy and our new options, and we hope that we can have a public TV sooner than we thought in the last 5 years. So I think that's for the moment. So
thank you so much. So much you've packed in there, so much to talk about. Farah, I'd love to come to you, and an invitation into your territory, but also your sort of cross territory as well. So do tell us more.
Thank you, Shanida, and thank you, the Sheffield DocFest team and everyone here. Thanks for having me. When I heard about what Diego said, I found a lot of similarities with what's happening in my region in Southeast Asia. Well, a little bit about me. I'm from Indonesia, so I work for a nonprofit organization called Indocs. It was established in 2002, so it's been a while. It was like during the celebration of our newly found freedom of expression when we have the reformation of the government in 1998. So Indocs was founded basically to support the freedom of expression through the medium of films. And we were so much about trying to find like funding for the documentaries. We were trying to nurture filmmakers, and in my region, I mean, you can make documentaries like very simple without a lot of funding. You can like do it with like $2,000 or something. So, but that was back then. And then after a while, I guess it was in 2016 when Indonesia had sort of like a memorandum of understanding with the UK, and then there was a new government body being created. It was the Indonesian Creative Economy Agency, and they sort of did some kind of like study, and they went to Sheffield Dog Fest actually back in 2016. So when they saw Mid Market, they thought like, why can't we have it in our region? Because their mandate is to bring in investment to the country, like from abroad. So their mandate is not to give fund to the creative economy products with documentary, of course, but they want to see like how we can collaborate or push like an international co-production. So that's why in 2017 we started to have this program called Talks by the Sea. It's a workshop and a pitching forum, just like what the other countries have, but we never had it before. So we had like try to curated like 30 the most strong projects from the region and try to have them present their projects to these decision makers, as we call it, from around the world. And we had an advantage of having it during summer in Bali. So it was like a bit of a good promotion for us. And since then, I think we start to see a progress of what we did. I think until now, I have a number of like, we have supported or invited 120 Southeast Asian documentary projects. And after that, even though we don't have a funding to offer to them, but they were exposed to these other potential funders from another part of the world. So they have went on to present themselves to the 60 international documentary forums, and they have received a lot of funding opportunities from abroad, maybe not much from Southeast Asia. And then I think there has been 33 projects completed, and they have went around like so many festivals. But that was it. I mean, like there's not much progress in us having like sort of like local funding for the documentaries. So that's what we're trying to see in the future. But then other things that we find interesting, apart from Docs by the Sea, we also work with the society, actually. So we did Good Pitch for Southeast Asia region back in 2017, where we found that it is a more effective way, actually, to find sources of funding for the documentaries, because like you can do it within one day. You can like have them present the projects, but of course this has to be projects that have us like a social impact mission. And then it's such a great platform for countries with very little infrastructure. So that's what we're trying to explore now. And it also blends the artistic power of documentary with the rich civil society system. We can connect this like ecosystem of the civil society organization and the ecosystem of documentary. So I guess that was like the thing that we try to see the most, because we cannot always rely on like funding from abroad. But also I think in the past 4 years that we have Docs by the Sea, we see much more opportunities has been opened up. I think in Southeast Asia, every country has like different system or different government who works with documentary. But now we see there's in Philippines, they have the Film Council Development, who start to like provide funding for a collaboration between Southeast Asian countries, for example. And we have like organization like Korean Pictures in Thailand, who gives funding as well for documentaries, or the Singapore International Film Fund. So it's different from every country, but I think it's a step to get there. And I think we should have faith that we can also like be independent and trying to find to fund our documentaries, because documentaries, in its nature, it's really hard to get a support from the government, because you have to work in the corridor of what the government wants. It's not always like you can make any story that you want. So I guess that's the challenge, and there are many countries with still like authoritarian government in Southeast Asia. I guess that's what I can share for now.
Thank you so much. It's so interesting. So much work is being done to solidify a sort of infrastructure around documentary before you even can start to sort of lobby for a documentary policy across the region. Thank you. Juan, I'd love to come to you.
Yes, hello. Me too. Thank you very much to Sheffield DocFest for having us, and to all of the members of the panel, and Shanida yourself. Thank you, and those of you who are listening to this conversation. My name is Juan Pablo Libossart, and I'm a commissioner for documentaries at the Swedish Film Institute, a public funding institution. And I am a person that previously worked as a producer and a writer, director. And I mention this because it's also a way for me to introduce, for those of you who are not familiar with our system, to the commissioner system that we have in most of the Nordic countries. Basically, the people deciding on the funding are the so-called film commissioners. We have film commissioners, 2 at the Swedish Film Institute, 2 for documentary, 2 for feature. We have 1 for shorts, 1 for films for youth audiences, and we have 1 special program that is called Moving Sweden, that supports films in a medium length format, but not only, they also do feature length and nowadays. So this is the opposite as committees deciding on the funding. In this case, there is a person behind every decision with pros and cons. The positive thing about this system is that the commissioners are recruited from the industries, people working in the industry that take the job for a number of years, usually 3 to 5. And to make a long story short, the positive thing, in my opinion, about this system is that you can put a face on every decision. And some people might argue that you don't compromise for something in the middle, as you might do when you sit in a committee constellation. In here, we, the commissioners, are behind the decisions, and filmmakers can apply to funds anytime during the year. And in case you get a no, you can always come back once the project has gotten some development, or you can even apply to the other. In the case of documentary, we have 2 commissioners, so you can apply to the other commissioner. Let me refer very shortly about my favorite support within our system, which is the development support, which is, in my opinion, our distinctive tool, because it's the tool that let us develop projects from a very early stage. There are not so many organizations within our industry that support projects from an early stage. And this is a great tool because filmmakers can apply via a established producer, but they can also apply in early stages of the process by themselves, and then they can contact producers later on. So it's a fantastic tool. Most of the decisions that we commissioners take are these development supports, and usually the dynamics of our system are they look in a way that filmmakers apply to a first development support. And as you know, we in documentary could say that we are under production all the time, or we are under development all the time. So the filmmakers apply for a first development support. I can refer later on to sums and amounts of money. If you want, we can go deeper into that. But we write a simple agreement where the filmmaker, in a conversation with the commissioner, says, okay, these are the goals. We are going to spend the money this and that way, and we set a time frame. They come back and usually get back to return with moving images to the next meeting months after, and it's a great thing, because filmmakers do get 2, 3, sometimes even 4 development supports before they reach the so-called production support. So it's an ongoing process where we commissioners don't get into the contents, but we participate into creative conversations, feedback, and we try to help the filmmakers as much as we can. Also, I'm sorry I haven't been keeping the time, so you, Shanida, feel free to interrupt me whenever it's time to. But I can refer very shortly before rounding up. I can refer to co-productions that maybe are interesting in this forum. We do support international co-productions. Filmmakers from abroad, Sweden, do need to contact and partner with a Swedish producer to apply for those money. We don't have a limit of productions, international co-productions we can support, but usually it tends to be between 4, 6, 8 between the two commissioners. The amount of money that we support tends to be in average 50,000 euro, 60,000 euro, but it varies a little bit. Sorry, I remember an animation from Denmark a couple of years ago got a documentary animation, got more money than the average, because that particular production needed that. And what else can I mention about international co-productions? Well, I mentioned that you need a Swedish producer, and then I can shortly say we can go further into this, but usually when filmmakers apply to international co-productions, the financing plans usually include Swedish television, regional funds in the country as Film Best, which is possibly the most known of them all, local film centrums. In the case of the Nordic co-productions with the Nordic countries, there is a pan-national fund that is called Nordisk Film and TV Fond, etc. And we do, yes, sorry.
No, it's
now
great.
I round up. We do support shorts. We do support new formats as VR and AR, and that's, maybe I can round up there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for joining us as you're recovering from illness. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you.
And I'd love to come to you for the perspective from the Danish Film Institute, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Shanida, and thank you, DocFest, for having me. And it's nice being here. Yes, but our situation is similar as to Juan's. I mean, I'm with the Danish Film Institute, and we are the main funding body for films in Denmark. So we do support the development, the production, distribution, marketing, festival participation here at the Danish Film Institute. We support animation, features, docs, gaming. So so we are the main funding body in Denmark for films, and we are in an ecosystem with regional funds that are getting stronger over the years. They have had additional funding over the years, so they are becoming a really strong national partner for the docs that we support. And also we are in a financial ecosystem with our broadcasters, our national broadcasters. And our funding is secured for a 5-year, this time it was a 5-year, normally it's a 4-year running film agreement, where it states that the government supports, in this case, documentaries, but also fiction and all the other genres, but documentaries. So we have a very stable political agreement over a stable period of years, where we know our funding, and we know, so I think that's really an important thing. The same goes for the broadcasters. They are the main distribution window for the documentaries that we support. So it's really paramount that they get brought. That's the way to reach a national audience in Denmark. So, and in their agreement with the government, it says that they have to engage in documentaries. Over the past years, it always stated how many documentaries over the period of 4 years they had to be part of, documentaries that we support, and that means creative documentaries. It doesn't mean actuality programs or, but I mean artistic creative documentaries. So in their agreement with the government, it says that over a 4-year period, you participate in around in a specific number of documentaries over this period, and previously also with a certain amount of money. So they were obliged to be part of and buy broadcast rights in the documentaries that we support. The last film agreement, it changed. So the fixed amount of money was withdrawn. Now it's on market conditions. There's no market for documentaries in Denmark. If you look at it money-wise, I mean, it's not that you earn a lot of money. You don't. I mean, there's a market for fiction features, but not for documentaries. But it says they are not obliged on the amount. They are only obliged on the number. So I think what is important for us at the Danish Film Institute, this is my bridge for saying that we have 2 strategic goals at the Danish Film Institute, because even though we have had a very strong history of supporting documentaries, and I expect it to continue, we still see changes. For instance, in our film agreements, all of a sudden one of our important partners, the industry's important partner when it comes to money-wise and distribution-wise, I mean, reaching an audience and having the conversation that these documentaries want to have with their audience is being limited in the last film agreement. So for us, it's really important. We have 2 strategic goals for this film agreement period at the Danish Film Institute, and one is to be better at talking about the cultural meaning of the films that we support, and also obviously the documentaries they support. I mean, we are really good at talking about the artistic value of the documentaries and the fiction that we support. It's due to the commission regime that we have film professionals with a very creative skills all the time, evaluating the artistic level and ambition of the projects that we support. But we haven't trained enough, we think, the muscle about how the cultural meaning, the cultural impact and significance for the audience of the films that we support. So that is one strategic goal that we have, and another one is that we want to get closer to the audience. So so in order to be better at talking about the necessity and why it's important to support art, support film, and in the end also support documentaries, and we are very aware of, and but we can dive into that. So, but I can talk more about that. But so even though we have stable economy and a fairly stable ecosystem, I mean, things can change too here. So I think we have a job to do that's really important. That's why I was happy to be invited on board this panel with the tagline you had, Shanida. So I think it's really important how we make the case for documentaries, even though our situations can be very different. I mean, we have the same challenge, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And here in the UK, the new BBC Director General, Tim Davie, recently sort of singled out documentaries, right? He was sort of arguing for the fewer, bigger, better approach, that maybe worthy documentaries that get lower audience numbers are to be cut. And sort of that articulation of sort of worthy documentaries, or documentaries that are worthy to or deserve support, is something that's incredibly complicated. And Anne, I'd sort of like to stick with you a little bit just to talk about, Denmark is really special. There is a rationale underpinning a sort of singling out of documentary as worthy of support. It's in agreements, it's in film policy, and as you said, the public service broadcasters have agreements with the government about documentary specifically. And sort of, can you invite us into sort of that rationale, where that comes from and how you lobby for that?
I just want to say that it sounds really, what you said, I mean, it sounds really unwise. I mean, it's like wanting to predict that you can make fewer films that are greater successes. I mean, there I would go with Juan that it's for decades. It's been a really strong and important part of our work is to do gives development support, and it's also to support new talents. And obviously, you have to be a risk-taking part. I mean, you can't expect to have very few and very successful films, whether it's fiction or documentaries. You can't order them. You really need to be a risk-willing part, both when it comes to the talents and when it comes to the formats and the themes. And then you'll get the big projects and the smaller projects, but there's an ecosystem. So it sounds really unwise. I mean, like you can order from a menu, but sorry. So I think it's really important that for a government body to be risk-taking and risk-willing part of a creative process, both in the conversations that the film consultants have, but also how we spend our money. So we spend a lot of our money on taking risks and on projects that never see the light of day. But it's important as a part of we think it's an important part of our job to spend our money that way. Like I said, I mean, I think we are inspired when it comes to the culture. Like I said, we have the strategic goal when it comes to cultural meaning. We are actually inspired by you in the UK, by the Arts Council UK, who did a survey on cultural meaning. So emotional, intellectual, creative, social meaning. And we've been really inspired by that and been working on how to expand and find words on our own that can reflect the meaning of the films that we support. And actually on the fiction side, because every month they do a profile of each fiction feature that goes out into the cinemas. They ask not only for how was your experience with the film, etc., what they normally expect, and who are you, etc., to get a profile of who have seen which films and how it went, but they actually also now ask about the cultural meaning of the film. So we start working on a vocabulary now on the impact and the meaning of the films other than ticket sales and festival prices. So this is, I think it's a really important thing, because that gives us a better tool to talk to the politicians, and also a better way of, of describing the impact and the meaning and significance of the films with the audience. So we are working on doing the same thing now with documentaries, doing a report there, and we're diving into the wording there too. But that adds to our conversations with politicians, who again are have referred to the populations and why do we support films. And obviously we here during the COVID crisis, I mean, it's been the culture here in Denmark that's been the last one the politicians have been worried about. I mean, so we always came in last in every economic discussion, every opening discussion. I mean, so there is tendency with us that other sectors are far more important and vital to the public than the arts. So we really have a work to do, being better at arguing. And I must say, it's really important for us not to argue on an economic level that it pays off. So for us, it's really important to have the conversations elsewhere, because if you start talking on that kind of economic level, whether it pays off, and start doing diagrams of how many are employed in the industry, etc. I mean, it's really a dangerous road for the arts to start arguing with on the economic field. So we are not going down that road. We are specifically going down the other road. And then we have a very big initiative when it comes. We've invited and did a deep dive anthropology with anthropologists. It's like a deep dive with the industry into the audience and how they work with their audience while working on their films. And that's a huge thing for us also at the moment. Like I said, reaching our audience in different ways. So how do we get closer to the audience in new ways than we had before? And that's also another way of adding in new conversations with the audience. So not to continue repeat ourselves, but also knowing our audience and not just think we know them, but do we actually know who they are and how they look and what they are like and are up to. So developing new tools with the industry and how to and have more data on when it comes to the audience too. So that's an important thing for us.
I think it's so important what you say about moving away from the language of the market and of market values when we're talking about creative expression and cultural importance and cultural meaning. Diego, I'd love to invite you in on this point, because things are in flux. You have in Chile, there's a socialist realist documentary tradition. There's been a long time of championing that history, that diversity of point of view, as well as its own distinct cinematic approach, right? And so, I'd love to know more about how you make this case. I know that Chiledoc sees the documentary sector as not just as a sector, but actually as a collective force. So I'd love to know more about how you make this case in terms of lobbying capacity when you speak with the Ministry of Culture and maybe those who aren't converted to the choir.
Yes, it's very difficult, of course, as any lobby in the world, no. But we were thinking about what's the problem in Chile is that the only way that you can find funds is from the Ministry of Culture. There is another kind of funds from internationalization and do things internationally, but for production and distribution and development also, you have from the Ministry of Culture. But the state, they do that in the national budget. So in the national budget, you have like 0.3% for audiovisual. I'm not sure the number, but it's very, very low. But it's just the national budget. So we were talking about now where the state had to get that funds, no? The state don't charge taxes or for any TV station, for any OTT or digital platform or any private theaters here in Chile. It's just the national budget. They say we have this budget to do that, but if we have the possibility to charge to those who are really part of the biggest industry, like the private TV broadcasters, like the theatrical private here in Chile, we will have more funds to do better films, not just documentary, of course, films, fiction, animation, also new media and new languages films. We have this opportunity. But that is not happening today because the private industry is very strong here, and this private industry, of course, don't support Chilean films a lot. I mean, because there's some examples, but they not support this kind. Of course, the US and Hollywood films here are amazing, so it's very difficult to amazing, I think, in terms of how they move all this distribution and marketing way. So it's very hard to compete with them. And actually, it's not possible to compete with them. So I think in this thought about the industry, we have to say one thing first. Chile, there is no industry for documentary and films from Chile, no? The industry is just Hollywood, and not even Europe, not even other parts of the countries. It's just what is happening in Hollywood. The people is seeing here, so we don't have this culture to watch documentaries. We don't have this because we don't have the public broadcasters. We don't have places on the theatrical to watch this documentary because all the big multiplex in Chile, they don't do that. And so I think we have to start to think about how we can break this, change this. And I'm always, when we thought about this, we had to back to the school, we had to go back to the childs. Why we are not watching documentaries in our schools, what we are not watching different ways of films in our school, as the same as we read a lot of books when we are growing up, because we have to. In Chile, you have to read a lot of books, like one per month, because it's important to increase the reading. So we thought we have to increase also the reading of films, how we can read the cinematography, how we can see, and how we can read all this narrative, because we are just used to see the narrative and the cinematic way of how Hollywood is doing it, So I think that's the one of a big step to start to break this disconnection that we have with the audience, because the audience don't know what we are doing and how we tell the stories, and it's not fault of the audience, of the people, it's fault of our system that create this impossibility to watch other things, and that's it's because there's just one big industry. There's no like an industry for this kind of films. We don't have that. We have to get funds from the state. We have to get funds from the state to distribute. We had to get funds from other states in the world, as I don't know, Denmark or Sweden. So we don't have this policy to try to understand well how we can start to do more films, better films. The first thing that we have to do is that to have an audience, and I think that's a very good thing to say, to start to work to understand the audience. That's very, very important. But I think that it's one thing before, that the audience from the beginning has to start to understand what documentaries are. In our case, it's very difficult because we don't have this great window that it's the broadcasters, and that give us the possibility to watch documentaries. We don't have that. You can't see documentaries in the TV here. So where you will find it, And I think that's our most important challenge in these years.
Can I just add? I just found a quote, because you said, Shanida, and also Diego, when you say when you lobby for films or documentaries, our CEO, he has a favorite quote that he's quoting all the time, that he uses, I know, when he speaks to politicians, actually. And it's a quote, again, one of the words that I have a difficulty at pronouncing, an anthropologist. Yeah, I think I got it right. Clifford Geertz. It's back from 1972, and he describes culture as the story we tell about ourselves for ourselves. So, I mean, that's about making a case for a national conversation through documentaries. And that's I know how he advocates with the decision makers, that we need that kind of national storytelling. We need stories about ourselves, for ourselves. That means we need both to make them grow and be able to grow, and we need also that they can be distributed so that they can reach an audience, so we can have that kind of conversation. So, yeah.
Thank you. And, you know, spot on in terms of the importance of learning to articulate ourselves and who we are and who we want to be. And we can do that, and often do that through documentary. So finding the language for that is supremely important. We just have a little over 10 minutes to go. So I'll be going to questions in a minute or two. But Farah, I wanted to invite you in because, you know, I know you mentioned things that are complicated. But also you are, you know, you're also reaching out across territory, across region, across Southeast Asia. And I'd just love to understand a little bit more about sort of how you lobby for documentary and the case for documentary funding with your regional partners.
Okay, so it's interesting because, as I told you, we have very diverse resources of people we try to approach to fund the projects. So like if you speak with the government, for example, and there are several like departments, normally the one who can give funding is like from the Ministry of Education. So they always put in the forefront, like your film should really prioritize the local wisdom. So that's the key word. And yeah, when you are like put that as a boundary, you can't really make the film that you want. But when you speak with the other ministry, like for the creative economy, it's all about like, can you really get your film distributed? That's always the core of the problem as well, that Diego touched upon as well. That's because we don't have like a proper distribution of the films. We don't know where the film will go afterward. Maybe they go to festival, but can they reach like a bigger audience in the regions? So they want to know as well. And that's why that it's really hard to get people to fund the films as well. And then when we pitch to like many parts of the world, it's, I don't know if it's sad, but this is like the real thing, keeping it real. It's always like about telling how it is underrepresented, how it has a universal value. So those are the things that really makes people think, oh, we want to hear the story from the region. But then I found, as we have held several pitching forums, that it's always the cinematic language that really draws people to join on board. It's when you have like strong, powerful image in your pitch trailer that's showing, for example, like how the Rohingya people can't cross the fence in front of their house, or how we can see, we can look through the inside the prison of for the drug on the war on drug victims in Philippines. Those are powerful images that finally like can get people to join on your filmmaking journey.
Wonderful, thank you. So I'm going to go to questions. Bear with me. We have some questions in from the audience. From John. John asks, what have you all observed from the outside are the main issues for feature documentaries or documentary makers here in the UK? What are your recommendations? Who would like to start? Anne.
I'm just trying to understand the question, the main issues.
Yeah, well, I think here it's it's what have you observed from your perspectives, international perspectives, of the main issues for feature documentaries and their makers here in the UK? I mean, you know, we've spoken about sometimes there's a narrow view about the power of documentaries. There's also sometimes we can be led by, you know, like Tim Davie trying to lead us by sort of market and market language, numbers, data, rather than impact. So those things can be problematic. And we just wonder if there's anything else that you have seen is affecting filmmakers and the sector here in the UK. Yes, please.
I'm going to be a little bit repetitive, and also not knowing very much in detail the climate in the for documentary in the UK, not in detail at least. But I think apropos this question, and also echoing a little bit of what Anne was saying before, I think we could answer the question by saying that less films is not the way to go, I would say. And I go back to the power of developing tools in early stages. I agree very much with Anne when she said that you cannot order a successful film.
Yeah.
Definitely, you cannot order a successful documentary. It is a process. It's a creative, organic process, and you make the films on the go. And also, it's in my 5 years as a commissioner at the Swedish Film Institute, and in my experience before, I've realized that the great films not always come from the place where you expected them to come. Sometimes you might think, okay, a great filmmaker with years of experience, with many successful films, and actually the great film comes from a filmmaker nobody knew about it, that is up and coming, that has gotten access to something very exciting, that has a great language to film language to show us, and that is fantastic. That's the great thing about making documentaries and making films in general. And also, one thing that is very important, I think, to take into consideration is the fact that documentary film it's a great case for representing different segments of our societies, multicultural. Also, it's a great tool for getting our film language forward. I see all the time that fiction, for example, borrows tools from creative documentary. Creative documentary is taking our film language forward all the time, and it is very exciting. Also, the fact that creative documentary it's a very helpful environment for developing new talents. So my answer to the question would be that more.
I totally agree. We need a plurality of documentary. We need to understand that there will be those bigger audience-led, audience-focused documentaries, but also those quieter, non-studio, if you like, stories, and stories that hold people and governments to account and tell much more quieter, insular stories too. So we have to remember that we have that tradition. Our documentary sector holds all of those perspectives all at once. We balance them and champion that, plurality of voice, and we explore many different, as you said, many different social contexts. And we mustn't ever, I think in the UK we can be bad at flag waving about this, but bold creative expression, it's what you're talking about, Juan Pablo, when film language is advanced through documentary. I've noticed this too. We are bold, we are risk takers, our filmmakers are bold and risk takers. So the more we can do to support and launch new voices, and anybody who wants to speak through documentary language is so important. I have a question, our last question here. from Christian, and actually, Juan, it's on something you had just raised. It's really important, I think, that you use the language of creative documentary. Christian says, "What is the special aspect of a documentary that makes it a genre to champion and support? In Europe, the language is very much of creative documentary. It's different to the UK. What is it that makes it special?"
It's like a it's like a, I don't know if a tricky question, because everything could be possible. But I want to say just two things. I think that in documentary, everything is point of view. No, we have to promote and encourage to the filmmakers that they have their own voice. No, and a documentary when have a most specific or way of see this point of view, give it strong to the film, to the story, to the narrative. You can everything you can construct from the point of view, the cinematic and the language and the narrative and everything, and even the budget, everything come from there. And I think that's one of the most important things that you have to be in your mind to start to create a documentary. Actually, also like another kind of language in cinema, but I think the documentary is the core of what we are doing. And a second thing that I want to say is that, and have relation with where you were talking, is that the only way that we can encourage and promote also diversity in our ecosystem, I don't know, in UK and other way, is to talking each other. It's not possible that we are doing documentaries or films just on our own. We have to talk with everybody, with the other filmmakers, with other producers, to create a community. So being closer together, it is easier to move forward. To try to understand what the other one is doing. And I think that's very important to our sector here in Chile. We are promoting a lot of that because we are not doing this alone, and it's more easier to get better results if we are working together, everybody. If the other one, if my neighbor has success, I'm sure that I will be successful in the future, and the other neighbor also. For that, we have to promote what it's happening, not just in our country. We're trying to do it now in our continent, and then we hope in the world.
Yeah, here. Thank you so much. Those feel like appropriate words to end. Thank you so much to all of the panelists today for joining us. I really appreciate the time you've given to discuss this incredibly important topic. And thank you to the audience for joining us and for your questions today also. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.